is Newstalk.
Yeah, hello there. So PSG Man City, lest you need reminding, has all the potential to be classic Champions League semi-final encounter. David Myler will join us pre-match. We'll have Mark Lawrenson towards the end of the game. Wednesday night rugby then. Andy Dunn and Rory O'Connor on the way. Leinster are without Johnny Sexton. They have a Heineken Champions Cup semi-final against La Rochelle this Sunday. Ulster have a Challenge Cup semi-final as well, so we'll chat to the lads after 8 o'clock. Katie Taylor, meanwhile, puts her considerable number of belts on the line in Manchester on Saturday. Billy Walsh was in her corner, of course, when she fought Natasha Jonas at London 2012, so we'll get Billy's thoughts later on. 53106 is the text number. We are at Off the Ball on Twitter. Richie McCormick, evening.
How are you, Joe? How are you?
Will O'Callaghan, hello.
Evening, lads. How are you getting on?
Very well. PSG, Man City will. Not much can go wrong here, I think.
No, it's the Gulf Derby we all know we needed in our lives, but probably a Champions League semi-final that's as mouth-watering as any we've had in recent years. You look at the amount of talent that's going to be on the pitch in an hour's time, and the big boost for Paris Saint-Germain ahead of kick-off that their captain Marquinhos has passed his late fitness test because they were already without their left-back Diallo going into the game. So he comes back in to slot into the centre of their defence alongside Kimpembe. And Pep Guardiola once again has chosen not to play with a striker, but it has worked reasonably well for him in recent games. You know, they created a lot of chances even with a different team at the weekend in the Carabao Cup final, and he will be putting his faith in the fact that the likes of Riyad Mahrez and Phil Foden and Kevin De Bruyne can provide the goals as opposed to Sergio Aguero and Gabriel Jesus, who are both sitting on the bench. But it's really set up for an interesting night in the French capital.
Yeah, sure is. Well, let's get into team news then. I'm sure people are eager to hear it. The news round on Off the Ball on Newstalk is with thanks to Gillette. We don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters. Richie, give it to us.
Yeah, it's a battle of the nouveau riche in the Champions League semi-finals tonight, or as our colleague Steve Dunt called it, the Oil Barons Ball. Qatar-backed Paris Saint-Germain meet the Abu Dhabi bankrolled Manchester City. For PSG, Keylor Navas starts in goal. A back four of Alessandro Florenzi, Marquinhos, Presnel Kimpembe and Mitchell Bakker in midfield. And we've got Idrissa Gueye, Leandro Paredes and Marco Verratti, while Angel Di Maria and Neymar are in support of the fully fit, it seems, Kylian Mbappe. Ederson starts in goal for City, who go the back four of Kyle Walker, John Stones, Ruben Dias and Joao Cancelo. In midfield, and it's Rodri, Ilkay Gundogan and Kevin De Bruyne. And across the front, the trio, none of them strikers as well mentioned, Riyad Mahrez, Bernardo Silva and the potent Phil Foden. Kickoff at the Parc des Princes is at 8 p.m.
Yeah, it definitely seems as if Pep in the big games now has really decided on his formula in the last couple of months, and it is Silva, Bernardo Silva, Phil Foden, Mahrez, De Bruyne, all working as a four, rotating, going where they like at times, and Sterling relegated to the bench. Sterling has played more than pretty much any player this season, give or take, but there's been a falling out there, we've heard, Will, so he watches from the bench. He was really good in the Carabao Cup final at the weekend. It's not like he's gone off the boil massively. He's not scoring goals, but it's Bernardo Silva, it's Foden, it's Mahrez and it's De Bruyne. They're Pep's four now.
Yeah, look, again, he played well at the weekend, Raheem Sterling, but as Sam Lee was telling us on the show recently, Sterling wasn't happy with his lack of game time, that he wasn't a guaranteed starter in Pep's system. And look, you can understand, given the movement that Bernardo Silva gives, you probably don't need what Raheem Sterling may well have brought to the side in recent seasons. And with Pep's system as well, you wouldn't be surprised if Joao Cancelo is being encouraged to get up into forward positions. He's almost been playing more as a midfielder than as a fullback in recent months. And there is that chance that you just get Walker kind of slotting in as a back three and Cancelo been given freedom to get forward. And then they've already got the protection because they've got both Rodri and Gundogan in front of their defence to free up Kevin De Bruyne to get into the space where a striker normally would be. So there'll be different times when Kevin De Bruyne is probably playing further forward than Bernardo Silva. I think the only player that's going to stay in a fairly static position will be Riyad Mahrez to give the width that they had at the weekend against Spurs, where he probably should have scored 2 or 3 goals. And Phil Foden, like, remarkable to see what he's achieved, Joe, at 20 years of age, 7 major trophies already in his back pocket at this point. And the fear that was there maybe last year that he wasn't going to get the game time, or maybe when David Silva moved on, he would still see himself being on the edge of the squad. Phil Foden has taken over that position that Raheem Sterling had occupied over the last couple of years. And, you know, understandable. You consider how intelligent his performance was away from home against Borussia Dortmund a couple of weeks ago in the second leg of the quarter-final. It's no surprise that Pep Guardiola puts his faith in Foden.
Yeah, he's been amazing. Bernardo Silva really is the breakout star this season. I mean, he was just so inconspicuous for a long time, wasn't he? I mean, Bernardo Silva, Gundogan, they all look the same, really. They're kind of technical players, 5'8", didn't stand out as such, but Silva's absolutely blossomed this year, been really, really amazing.
I'd actually say Gundogan's probably been the standout of the three of them or four of them if you're going to pick out the player that's most impressed and most improved for City this season, because I guess what we're seeing now and what we have seen over the course of the last 6 months in particular is the Ilkay Gundogan that Manchester City actually signed from Borussia Dortmund a couple of years ago, and we saw him performing to the level at which he was performing consistently in the Champions League and in the Bundesliga for Dortmund. He's started to provide goals from midfield at a rate of knots over the course of the last few months, and their rise up the table has been tethered to his form, I guess, because for me, Gundogan is probably in contention for being one of the Premier League, if not the Premier League player of the season.
Is he? Oh, that's passed me by as well. That's passed me by as well.
I think so, Joe, because like when Kevin De Bruyne was out, we all were wondering, especially with the double injury of Aguero, and De Bruyne was taking a lot of goals out of the Man City team. And then it freed up Gundogan to almost play in the Kevin De Bruyne role, which was playing ostensibly as a central midfielder, but becoming a box-to-box player who popped up in those kind of number 10 positions. And Gundogan was incredibly good at it. And even now that De Bruyne has come back into the team, with the fluidity that Man City play with, Gundogan still finds himself in a lot of attacking positions. He's become such a valuable player for them. But this is something Pep Guardiola does really well. Like, he reinvented De Bruyne as a central midfielder alongside Silva, when many people would have thought a couple of seasons ago they shouldn't play in a centre of midfield together. And Bernardo Silva, on the face of it, when he arrived from France, looked like a player that you'd want to have in wide positions as opposed to playing as a false nine. But Guardiola's just really good at reinventing where players play, and they seem to enjoy the freedom that they're given.
Sorry, I got Gundogan and Bernardo Silva mixed up. It's Gundogan this is my point. This is my but these Man City players. Sorry, it's Gundogan who scored all the goals. Yeah. Sorry.
Do you know what though?
Well, then actually,
it is a good point.
Well, actually, Bernardo Silva has not made as much of an impression on me then. Gundogan's been brilliant, but actually Silva is the one who's not made as much of an impression on me.
Bernardo Silva was probably their best player last year. But Gundogan definitely. But like, to Will's point, and I guess to yours as well, Guardiola is fantastic at keeping players hidden in plain sight, in that they won't necessarily be the star of the show, or they won't necessarily be attracting the 9 out of 10 performances week in, week out, but you can live with the Raheem Sterling being on the bench. Like, that's almost, I'm not going to say a non-story, but you haven't noticed it because they've been able to bring to the fore a Phil Foden, or they've been able to rotate in and out somebody like Bernardo Silva or Ilkay Gundogan when De Bruyne has been injured. And then you have Rodri acting as the pivot in midfield, and they've had a defence that's, improved immeasurably since Ruben Dias came on board. So pretty much throughout that team, they've been fantastic. And Pep's man management, regardless of this supposed falling out that he's had with Sterling, I think they've learned, obviously, they can cope without him, but he showed that he can keep players hidden in plain sight, that he can bring players on, and he can lift their form when it needs lifting. And they're in the position they are now in the semi-final of the Champions League. They're about to be crowned Premier League champions. They just have the League Cup under their belts. They're doing all right. Yeah,
no, it's true. Well, look, he's hidden Bernardo Silva for me perfectly in plain sight. Gundogan less so, to be fair, but Bernardo Silva definitely, considering, he is now very much part of that front four and is pretty much guaranteed to play alongside De Bruyne and Mahrez and Foden. So he's one of that front four for them at the expense of Sterling's. We'll talk to Dave Myler around 7:30. On Chelsea last night, Will, they were really good, I thought. Got to see a good bit of the game in here in studio last night. I mean, I must have said about 10 times, oh, Kante, you really are just amazing. It's criminal to think that Kante was playing like right wing or something for Lampard when you see him last night.
Yeah, look, it's another lung-busting performance from Kante in the middle of the field, and this is what you come to expect, particularly on big occasions and against a Madrid midfield who have held their own in every big game that they've played so far this season. I know Toni Kroos wasn't entirely fit, but still he's there alongside Modric, with Casemiro as their attack dog within the midfield too. And, Kante was able to outrun all three of them throughout the game, and he made so many important interceptions. The only disappointment, if you're Thomas Tuchel at the end of the game, would be, particularly in that first half, that Chelsea didn't turn some of the good opportunities that they had. And again, Timo Werner was guilty of missing a good chance.
The jury is starting to be a little bit out now on Werner, isn't it? I mean, the miss against West Ham at the weekend, and then last night, that is gilt-edged. He's 25. He's not like an 18-year-old who's pitched up here and trying to get to grips with things. Yeah.
He's an 80 million quid striker, pretty much, and they should be expecting better from him. He should have. You can't say how somebody's going to settle, but you would have figured that for the money they paid for him and the form that he'd shown previously, that he was going to settle better than he has done. I don't think being in and out of the team at the start of the season helped. I don't think it necessarily helped him hit the ground running. But regardless, like, you want more from him. You want him to be putting away his chances. Yesterday you mentioned, and on the N'Golo Kante thing, like Nathan was talking about when he was sitting beside Ray Houghton for one of the Liverpool games, and Houghton was tapping him on the shoulder and saying, you know, every time he wanted to come in, one of the greatest pleasures I've ever had was actually watching N'Golo Kante during the last World Cup when John Giles was in the studio, because John was absolutely in awe of the guy as well. He thought him and Modric were absolutely standout players, and to sit beside John Giles and have him give notes on why such and such a midfielder is putting in a brilliant performance is quite the joy. And I'd love to hear his opinion tomorrow night on how Kante performed, because that is the player that we'd seen a couple of years ago when Leicester won the title and when Chelsea won the title then under Antonio Conte, and thank God he's back again.
Well, he's such a good footballer as well. He's such an underrated footballer, so he was brilliant last night. Both teams mightn't be too distraught with 1-1. Chelsea, it's a good result to take home, and Madrid, no, it could have been a whole lot worse. So that was last night. We'll see how tonight goes. Like I said, David Myler is going to join us in about 15 minutes' time. Punchestown Day 2, Rich?
Yeah, Paul Nicholls trained a third winner of the Punchestown Gold Cup this evening. Sam Twiston-Davis led Clonde Zobo home a length and a half ahead of pre-race favourite Alboom Photo in the feature. Paul Townend may have missed out on winning the big race of the day, but he did stretch his lead over Rachel Blackmore in the race for champion jockey. He was aboard the 13-8 favourite Galopin des Champs for victory in the Grade 1 Irish Mirror Novice Hurdle. Today's other Grade 1, the flat race there, was won by the Willie Mullins trained Kilcruit.
Now, Daniel Ek, he of Spotify, says he means business here.
Yeah, Spotify founder Daniel Ek says he's secured funds to make a very compelling offer to buy Arsenal. The Swedish billionaire has reportedly linked up with legends Dennis Bergkamp, Thierry Henry and Patrick Vieira to launch a takeover bid. Current owner Stan Kroenke has reiterated that he has no plans to sell at any stake, and the man who paid Joe Rogan $100 million for his exclusivity on Spotify told CNBC today he hopes Arsenal take his offer seriously.
I just see a tremendous opportunity to set a real vision for the club, to bring it back to its glory. And I want to establish trust with fans, and I want to engage the fans again. So to answer your question, I'm very serious. I have secured the funds for it, and I want to bring what I think is a very compelling offer to the owners, and I hope they hear me out. Certainly didn't expect that this would happen overnight, and I'm prepared that this could be a long journey. But, all I can do is prepare what I think is a very thoughtful offer and bring it to them and hope they hear me out.
I mean, they don't want to sell. It's not like Stan Kroenke needs the cash. I'm not sure why this is such a big story. Well, I guess, okay, it's interesting. Spotify founder wants to buy very famous football club. I get that part. But there's no likelihood, I presume, of Kroenke selling based on everything we've heard. I just checked there. The value of Spotify, $67 billion. Thank you very much. Ooh, that is a lot of money. So he owes a 20% stake.
Yeah, he's apparently worth €4 billion euro. Somewhere in that region. So yeah, it's a massive PR job for him, and I don't know what the end game of it is, because it's just going to make the Kroenkes more unpopular. They're definitely not going to sell. They're definitely not going to sell to somebody who has so haphazardly made this whole thing public and so silly to become almost like a public auction. This isn't how clubs are bought and sold. It's just not the way of the world. And I'm struggling to find out what his end game is here, because it's certainly not buying Arsenal. And
is it fame? Is it fame? Is it marketing?
Marketing to some degree. You'd have to figure there's some kind of football angle down the road for them, whether it's Spotify investing in a football club, whether it's a massive podcast series built around one of the big boys in Europe somewhere. But them buying Arsenal, not going to happen.
No. So the World Snooker Championships, we're at the quarter-final stages.
Yes, indeed we are. Stuart Bingham held off a late rally this evening from Anthony McGill to book his place in the semi-finals of the World Snooker Championship. Having won 5 frames in a row this afternoon, the 2015 champion Bingham was taken to a deciding frame. Bingham won it to set up a semi-final date with Mark Selby. The world number 4 was a 13-3 victor over Mark Williams earlier this morning. The last semi-final place is up for grabs tonight. Sean Murphy is closest to it. He has taken a 10-6 lead over Judd Trump into the evening session at the Crucible. Kyron Wilson awaits the winner of that one after surging to a 13-8 win over Neil Robertson earlier today. He won 5 frames on the bounce. Last year's runner-up had trailed Robertson by 3 frames on a couple of occasions earlier in the match and said it was important to kill the Aussies' momentum.
Neil can sort of go off into the distance if you let him. So it was just about sort of trying to sort of put a stop to that, kind of make him think a little bit. I think when he thinks, he can kind of go into his shell sometimes. So when he's scoring very fluently, for me, he's probably the best player in the world. So it was just about trying to neutralise that and, just trying to be strong in the match department.
There we are. Someone's tweeted me to say they're with me. Gundogan, Bernardo Silva, Rodri, they've all blended into one. Yeah, maybe it's just me. Well, that's two. There's two of us.
That's the ideal, though, for a team like Manchester City, whereby your front six essentially are almost interchangeable. Well, I guess you can take Rodri out of that, but if you have that front five, like you look at who's either side of Rodri tonight, Ilkay Gundogan and Kevin De Bruyne, they've often been deployed in the front three themselves. The front three aren't even strikers, any of them. So it's nice to be in a position whereby your players are so well drilled and you're so confident in their abilities that you can rotate them around to whatever position you like in that front five, and they're going to be as effective as they have been in the last match wherever they're playing. So yeah, it's a good place to be, and roll on a lot of that interchangeability.
Yeah, Gundogan's really caught the eye this year for sure because of the goals, so that's separated him in my mind. But for Bernardo Silva, considering how good this guy is and how much football I watch, he was named Manchester City's Player of the Year in 2019. Now, admittedly, they weren't at their very best in 19, but he was the Man City Player of the Year. He was on the Premier League Team of the Year, and he was on the 30-man shortlist for the Ballon d'Or, and I just confused him with Gundogan. Will, talk to me. What does Bernardo Silva bring to the party? Go.
He was really good playing in a slightly different role back in 2019. In fairness, I don't think he's hit the same heights since then. I think he was more pivotal in their attack, and they also played slightly differently, where they were far more reliant on getting the ball to a striker, and Bernardo Silva effectively cutting in from the right-hand side to actually give him support, while Riyad Mahrez has become the undisputed starter in the last 18 months over on their right-hand side. And, just to Richie's point there, this might actually lessen the load on Man City too in the transfer market this summer. And I know everyone is talking about the potential for Erling Haaland going to the Etihad for next season. The fact is that Man City could probably get away without buying a striker, and we all saw this as a potential crisis for them when eventually their top goal scorer of all time, Sergio Aguero, was going to leave the club, and who was going to replace Sergio Aguero? It may well be a case that he gets replaced by not playing a striker, and they just play all of these fluid attacking midfielders up front, and makes it very difficult for the centre backs. Like, I would imagine that Marquinhos and Kimpembe would much prefer to be going up against Gabriel Jesus tonight, and they know exactly who they're marking, as opposed to Bernardo Silva and Mahrez ending up in different positions and they won't know who to mark later.
Yeah, I guess we all have players we just almost follow within a game. Like when I'm watching City, I'm watching Foden, De Bruyne and Mahrez. I'm watching John Stones because I like him. Walker always catches my eye. Cancelo to a lesser extent. Tonight, actually, although that might be a waste of a very good game, but tonight I'm going to watch Bernardo Silva and Ilkay Gundogan. They're my two this evening.
Keep an eye on Mbappe and Neymar. They're not bad either.
Yeah.
They're not bad. I'll tell you what I'm looking forward to, though, this summer is the constant debate over the misuse of Phil Foden during the Euros, because I think we've seen over the past while that England don't necessarily know how to get the best out of those creative players, particularly the ones who you would figure, if Kane is fully fit, that are going to play in behind Harry Kane, and how to best use the riches they have on offer to them are actually pretty silly incredible. When you consider it's like Phil Foden, Raheem Sterling, Jack
Grealish,
Jadon Sancho, Jack Grealish,
and Mason Mount. Insane. By the way, Mason Mount. Every level he goes up, he was brilliant last night. Yeah,
but they're going to make games of it because that's what England do, and that's
I assume Marcus Rashford will play over in the position that Phil Foden usually plays in. So it becomes, if we assume that Harry Kane plays at number 9, Jadon Sancho probably plays over on the right. Like, one of Mason Mount or Phil Foden isn't getting into the team then.
Yeah. Almost certainly.
26-man squad, they're all right.
Almost certainly, or else they'll butcher themselves trying to fit them all in. Yeah, God, they have such an embarrassment of riches at the moment. Werner doesn't have a football brain. Pace only gets you so far, reckons Scott in Summerhill in Meath. Yeah, I see. I've only seen Werner in the Champions League. Graham Hunter was on with the lads this morning on OTB AM, and he said he has wondered for some time if there is something of the flat track bully about Werner, or has there been in his Bundesliga career. I mean, in the Champions League, he did look very, very good. So you almost want to give him the benefit of the doubt, as in there's a degree of settling into a new club. As Richie was saying, he was in and out of the team, and maybe his attempted finish last night, there was a degree of low confidence about that, as in I'm just going to safely get this on target. And maybe if he's at the peak of his powers, you know, clearly he's more than good enough to put that into one of the corners, but that's giving him a serious benefit of the doubt. And as we've said, he's 25 and cost 80 million quid, so you're kind of paying to not have to extend that benefit of the doubt. Mike says, lads, I've got a feeling this could be another humiliation for Guardiola. I just do not trust the Man City defence. Yeah, we'll see. David Myler with us very shortly. It does seem like City have put a lot of work into becoming more solid and have done that right across the season, but a different challenge this evening to the norm, to say the least. Where are we going next, Rich?
George North will miss this summer's Lions tour of South Africa because of a knee injury. The Ospreys player will undergo surgery next week after rupturing his ACL in Saturday's win over Cardiff. North toured with the Lions in both 2013 and 2017, the first major absentee from Warren Gatland's squad this summer. Reports in France, meanwhile, say that La Rochelle have begun vaccinating their players. The under-50s in France are not expected to be vaccinated against COVID-19 until mid-June, but in a season beset by postponements in the top 14, Ronan O'Gara's side have begun sourcing excess doses in the Nouvelle-Aquitaine region with the assistance of the local health authority. Earlier this week, Bordeaux-Bègles president Laurent Matry warned of teams getting an unfair advantage by skipping the vaccination queue. La Rochelle, of course, play host to Leinster this weekend in the semi-finals of the Heineken Champions Cup in a game you can hear live on Off the Ball.
Yeah, we have Andy Dunn on the way, Rory O'Connor as well after 8 o'clock. Previewing that game should be really interesting. La Rochelle have loads of weapons to hurt Leinster. One of the interesting things Robin McBride was saying was that La Rochelle, obviously a lot of big men in their pack. They have Will Skelton, who's 22 stone, Antonio, I think 24 stone, and McBride was making the point that in terms of minutes of ball in play per the 80, that often with La Rochelle it's kind of in the high 20s, and Leinster said they're more than comfortable to take them into 40 plus minutes of ball in play. Let's move these La Rochelle players around and test their fitness. So that's going to be one of the Leinster tactics or strategies for Sunday, but it should be a really good game.
Yeah, like perfectly understandable. If you have got that big a front five in particular, if you're La Rochelle, the last thing you want to do is for those guys to have to hit a million rucks during the 80 minutes of the match on Sunday. You understand, if you can play some clever kicking and play for territory, you can ease some of the pressure on them. So I can perfectly understand why Leinster will be hoping to keep the ball and maybe even soak up some of the pressure themselves by just keeping possession. Like, the blueprint is there. I was chatting to Brian O'Driscoll about this on Monday night, that the way Leinster played, particularly after they went 14-0 down away to Exeter, they went and won pretty much every battle from then on, and they showed remarkable control, with crucially Ross Byrne being the architect with all that control for the best part of an hour within the game. I would imagine that has to give them huge confidence that even without Jonathan Sexton, that they can still go to France and get what will be a fairly rare semi-final victory on French soil in the last four of the Champions Cup. They've gone 4 different occasions and lost in 3 of them up until now, and they'll be very wary of being knocked out by a La Rochelle side who will be perfectly rested, and they've got pretty much a fully fit squad as well, because their game against Brive was off last week. I know Leinster had all of their frontline players pretty much not playing, but La Rochelle had literally the feet up and were able to just watch everything happening in the top 14, and they can come in perfectly rested for this weekend.
Richie, Olympics?
Yeah, athletes competing at Tokyo 2020 and the Paralympic Games as well will be tested every day for coronavirus. They'll all need to return 2 negative tests before they travel to Japan as well. Anyone else involved in the games will be tested regularly, say organisers, and they'll decide in June how full venues can be, having already announced that no spectators from overseas can attend the games in Japan. And we're already looking ahead to next season's Six Nations. Ireland will begin the tournament at home to Wales. Organisers have confirmed the fixtures for 2022, with the tournament beginning on Saturday, February 5th. A week later, there's a trip to France, with Italy visiting the Aviva on the final Sunday in February. Andy Farrell's side will be at Twickenham to play England on March the 12th, with Scotland coming to Dublin a week later for the final round of fixtures.
And just before we go, a couple of Grand Prix hit.
Yeah, the Formula 1 Canadian Grand Prix won't take place this season at all. It's because all visitors are required to quarantine for 14 days on arrival into the country due to the ongoing pandemic. It will be replaced by the Turkish Grand Prix. That's going to happen on the 11th of June. While Silverstone has confirmed it'll host F1's first ever sprint qualifying race ahead of this year's British Grand Prix. The new format was approved by the world governing body, the FIA, on Monday, and will be trialled at 3 events this season. The grid for the Sunday Grand Prix is going to be decided by a shorter race on the Saturday.
Florentino Perez nodding approvingly from distance. All right, you two, give me a prediction for tonight. Go on, Rich.
I'm going to go 2-1 City.
2-1 City. Will?
2-1 Paris Saint-Germain, but City will qualify next week.
Oh, there we go. David Myler next.
And I can tell you that at Villa Park, with only moments to go, it's 3-3. Villa were 3-1 up, and And if it stays that way there and the same way here, Liverpool will be champions.